We often celebrate the kids who never caused any trouble, those who seemed so perfectly composed and low maintenance from the outside. But there is a heavy, unspoken truth behind being the easy child. More often than not, it just means you were broken in ways no one bothered to look at. And maybe that's why, whenever someone asks about your childhood now, you just freeze, like the answer isn't quite there. Not because it was terrible or because nothing happened, but because somewhere between the age of 8 and 18, it feels like you skipped over a dozen chapters. See, that specific void is what I want to explore today. There is this phenomenon that takes place when your youth ends way before it was ever supposed to. And I'm not talking about some massive cinematic tragedy. Often, it's much quieter than that. It might be the fact that you were checking the locks and making sure the stove was off at age 9 while your parents were working late, or acting as the emotional bridge between your parents when they stopped speaking, or even mastering the art of sensing the energy in a room before you even mastered long division. There's something people don't often mention about this. That version of you, the one who had to become an adult too soon, that part doesn't just evaporate. It's still there, influencing how you make choices even right now. Let me paint a clearer picture for you. Imagine a child, maybe 10 years old, who has suddenly become the most dependable person in the building. Not because they volunteered for it, but because there was no other choice, and something in them shifts. Professionals call this parentification. It's the clinical term for when a child assumes roles and burdens that should strictly belong to the adults. But that cold label doesn't quite describe it, does it? It doesn't describe the physical weight of being very small and trying to stabilize a world that is far too large for you. Dr. Lisa M. Hooper, who has spent years researching this dynamic, noted that parentified children often display what looks like incredible maturity. But, and this is the vital part, it isn't actually maturity. It's a survival adaptation. It is a young nervous system learning to exist in emergency mode as its natural state. That mindset tends to stick. What felt like a normal Tuesday to you was actually someone else's crisis that you were managing. Now, many people who were raised this way realize they've become exceptionally skilled at certain things. Reading micro-expressions. You could tell exactly how the evening would go the moment the front door clicked shut. Anticipating what everyone else needed before they even realized they needed it. Solving problems became your default setting because, honestly, the alternative wasn't an option you could live with. But here is where it starts to surface later on. Those very superpowers you cultivated, they come with a hidden invoice that you didn't realize you'd be paying 20 years down the line. You know what's actually quite fascinating? People who grew up too fast usually find the hardest part isn't the massive life challenges. As you'd expect, they can handle those with their eyes closed. No, it's the simple stuff. Admitting you need help, resting without a sense of impending doom, being, I don't know, silly or spontaneous. Those things feel genuinely dangerous to them, because when you learned at a tender age that the world doesn't pause for you, and that your own needs are a distraction, you realized that stability depends entirely on your ability to hold everything together. You didn't just pick up a habit, you built an entire operating system around that belief. And that software is still running in the background. Let's talk about what this looks like in your adult life. Often, people like this become the rock that everyone else leans on during a storm. The reliable one. The one who just gets it done. You might find yourself drawn to people who are projects, people who need fixing. Now, I know that makes it sound like a savior complex, but in reality, it's because being needed is the only way you've learned to feel loved. It's the only frequency you've been trained to recognize. Relationships, as a result, get very complicated. Intimacy feels like being exposed because intimacy requires being vulnerable. And vulnerability was a luxury you simply couldn't afford back then. So even now, even when you are perfectly safe, Even when you're with someone who truly treasures you, there is a part of you that cannot let the shield down. It just will not let the shield down. You might find yourself attracted to partners who are emotionally unavailable. And before you start blaming yourself for that choice, understand this. Unavailable feels familiar. It feels like home. Because home was a place where you gave of yourself endlessly, and, well, receiving was a rarity. So when someone offers you steady, consistent affection, it might actually feel wrong. It feels suspicious, like you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then there's the issue of control. And no, I'm not talking about being controlling in a toxic way, though it can manifest that way sometimes. I'm talking about that deep, primal urge to manage every single variable in your environment. Because back then, unpredictability meant danger. Chaos meant everything was about to fall apart. So you plan, you overthink, a lot, might I add. You run through 20 different what-if scenarios before making even a tiny decision. People might label you as type A, or a perfectionist, or just anxious. But what they're actually seeing is a child who remembers that letting their guard down had consequences. The exhaustion is massive, by the way. That heavy, bone-deep tiredness that a weekend of sleep can't touch, that isn't laziness, and it isn't weakness. That is what happens when your nervous system has been redlining since you were in elementary school. Your body never actually learned what true peace feels like because peace wasn't categorized as safe. To rest was to let the guard down, and that's when the world might collapse. Here's something that might be hard to hear. A lot of people who grew up too soon have a very strange relationship with success. You achieve things, impressive, good things, but it never feels like it's enough to let you stop. There's always a voice in your head saying, more, better, faster, prove you're useful. Because your worth got tangled up with your utility a long time ago. And the cruel part? The world actually rewards this behavior. Society absolutely loves people who grew up too fast. Think about it. We're efficient, we're independent, we don't ask for much, we're low maintenance and high output. But nobody ever asks what we had to trade away to become this way. There's something else that happens too. You become fluent in a language most people never have to learn, the language of emotional labor. You can steer the energy in a room like a conductor leading an orchestra, diffusing a conflict before it even ignites because you can see it coming from a mile away. You make everyone else feel comfortable while you're secretly drowning inside. And the weirdest part? You might not even realize you're doing it anymore. It's just automatic, like breathing. Except breathing is supposed to keep you alive, and this just slowly drains you dry. You probably have these moments where you're surrounded by people, friends, family, colleagues, and you still feel completely isolated. Not lonely in the way people usually mean, but alone in the sense that nobody truly sees how much effort you're putting in to keep everything smooth, to keep everyone else okay. And asking them to notice that effort feels, I don't know, like admitting defeat. Like you failed at the one job you were supposed to be perfect at. So what do you actually do with all of this? How do you heal from something you're not even sure counts as trauma? Because it wasn't one big explosion, it was 1,000 tiny moments of being too much and not enough at the same time. First, you have to grieve. And I know that sounds heavy, but you're mourning something very real. You're mourning the childhood you were denied, the version of you who should have been allowed to be messy and needy and irresponsible and still be cherished. That kid deserved that. And saying that out loud doesn't make you ungrateful or bitter. It just makes you honest about the truth. Secondly, you have to learn, and this is the brutal part, that being needed is not the same thing as being valued. That your worth isn't calculated by what you produce or how well you can manage the emotions of the people around you. You are not a human doing, you are a human being. And just being is plenty. You are allowed to take a break, to not have the answer for once. You're even allowed to be the one who falls apart sometimes, and to receive care without having to earn it first. And maybe most importantly, you're allowed to be a total beginner at being taken care of, because that's exactly what you are. The fact that you're 30, 40, or 50 doesn't change the fact that you never actually practiced letting someone else carry the weight. So be patient with yourself as you learn. That child who grew up too fast, they did a legendary job holding everything together. They were resourceful, and they were strong, and they were brave beyond measure. But they can rest now. They aren't forced to run the show anymore. It is safe to let someone else take a turn. It's safe to be young at heart, even if you're arriving to it a little late. You've been clenching your fists for so long. What would it feel like to finally just let go? If this hit home for you, please subscribe. And if you'd like to support these deep dives, hit that join button to become a channel member. I would genuinely appreciate your support.